Hello sports fans, welcome back to the Bailiwick Sport Podcast. I'm your host Elliot Corbel, and today we're joined by two of the men masterminding the recent resurgence of men's rugby here in Jersey. I'm talking of course about men's head coach Myles Landick and newly appointed attack and backs coach and player Scott Van Breda. After their stunning promotion campaign last season, I sat down with the lads to discuss everything pre-season, new additions to the squad and the exciting challenge of competing in this new league this season. Their first league fixture of the 2024-25 campaign kicks off tomorrow with an away trip to Tunbridge Wells. So without further ado, here's Myles and Scott. Myles, Scott, thank you so much for joining us in the Bailiwick Sport Podcast. How are we?
Good, yeah, very good.
Fantastic. Now, new season coming up shortly. We've got that first game of the season coming up in just a week's time. We're going to throw some numbers at you from last season. We all know how successful it was for you. Obviously, the runaway winners of Regional 2 South Central. 22 games, 20 wins, nearly 1,000 points scored. Stepping up to this league now, how successful did you find last season, and how did the squad react to it being such a successful campaign?
To be honest with you, I think we've always had our goals and aspirations on where we wanted to go and where we wanted to be. And I think having such a successful year the year before at level 7, we definitely knew we had a couple of years to go. We played Oxford Harlequins in a pre-season game at level 7, and at the time they were level 5. And we managed to get a good win against them in pre-season. So we knew probably level 5 was probably around where we want to get to.
So taking from what we, obviously, the massive amount of points scored, massive amount of total points scored in the end, winning the league by 17 points in the end, what sort of strengths do you think you can carry forwards from last season into this season?
I think we used a fair few players last year. I think that was a really big positive for us, getting those younger guys a fair bit of game time, which hopefully they will get game time this year. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, we used 45 players last year. So hopefully them getting game time at level 6 will stand them in good stead going into level 5. And I think Scott will agree. I think we've seen how they're transitioning and coming on in those sessions.
Tell us a little bit about some of those younger players. Throw some names out there for us.
So Sam Harvey was pretty special last year. I thought he didn't play too much of the Colts the year before, straight out of the Colts and then into senior rugby. And I thought, he had a great attitude, adapted well, and obviously scored some brilliant tries. There was one against London Irish where there's a couple of steps and down the wing and score. So he was brilliant. And there was a couple of other guys sort of on the fringes that were coming through as well. So I think probably Sam definitely was of last year was probably one of the big standout players for us that sort of excelled. But there's a couple now coming through. We had a pre-season game on Saturday, and Billy Mullins, a couple of those come through, and also we put a second team out on Saturday. And again, Scotty's doing a lot of great work with some of those younger players to get them ready, and to be able to put a second team out was also fantastic on Saturday.
You mentioned a lot over last season about the importance of, once it was kind of confirmed that you were going to run away with the league, of blooding some of those younger players early. What advantage do you see now of them having been in the setup and been around you guys as coaches and played at that level and now stepping up and being ready?
I think it's just one of those things, getting that sort of experience. You can't really just throw a guy and getting that experience, sort of adult rugby, because in Jersey there's not as many games when you're growing up, bits and pieces like that, and the standard sort of varies. So I think just giving them that game time, and straight away you could see sort of the boys who were involved last year stepping up and sort of guiding the next generation of younger guys who've stepped up again this year. And I think overall we sort of really bearing the fruits now of the work Mitch and Timmy have done over the last sort of 3-4 years, where these guys are coming in and it's not a case of you have to go back to square one. They're sort of really up to speed quickly. And the guys who've been involved, they know the calls, they know the systems and things like that. So they can then help their mates, because it's much easier for a younger guy to go to his mate who's a year above than come to me or come to Milo. As easy as we can say as many times as we want, come talk to us anytime. But just to have those lines of communication, I think, is massive. And now they can see, if you put in the hard work and you go well, like a Sam Harvey or Eric, all those boys, then the opportunities are going to be there for you. And we're not afraid if you're sort of good enough, you're old enough in our eyes.
Like that. And yourself, Scott, for those of you who don't know, have taken on the new role of attack and backs coach for this season alongside your playing. How have you found that so far?
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been sort of, I can always just say, do what Mitchie said we should do. So a lot of it's just been around that, to be honest, but really enjoyed it so far. It's one of those things I'd wanted to get into at some point and see, and obviously when Myles and Mitch came and said this opportunity, I was like, no question, let's do it and see. Because worst case is it's a year, not too sure. And I say next year, okay, Myles, it's all you. But so far, I've really enjoyed it. Balancing the playing side at times in some sessions can be tricky, just because you sort of want to coach and you want to play and you want to get that balance right. And then probably trying to actually appreciating how little time we have in a week. We're used to being in a pro setup where you got 6, 7, 8, 9 sessions a week. You got 10, 20 hours to work on things. And even then you'd hear coaches saying, oh, we didn't have enough time. Put them in this and you've got 2 hours a week and you want to do scrums and lineouts, and Myles needs his half an hour units and I want the team for attack, and then we want to do defense and we want to work on this. So really trying to pinpoint those key areas where we can focus on to give us the best chance of being as successful as we can this year.
What do you think you can bring to this role? What changes have you made already?
We haven't needed, like, especially from an attack point, I don't think we needed to change that much. Now I've always been keen on the finer details, probably around the basics of the game, and ensuring if we've got those platforms, then we can start doing the fun stuff and score these wonderful tries. But if we can't catch and pass and run straight, then I'm not too interested in seeing what you can do outside of that. So I guess I've tried to bring it back to that, because I feel if we can get those things really, really good and always be on the same page, it then allows the guys who have that natural talent to flourish. And then alongside that, we've sort of put a lot of work in our defence in these last 6, 7 weeks, and hopefully we'll start seeing those coming through, because once it gets tricky and it gets November, December, January, and there's no more sunshine, we need to be able to defend for long periods of time.
Myles, how impressed have you been with his coaching so far?
Oh, 100%. He's brought literally a huge amount. Not saying like we just sat here. Brought an absolute huge amount. Just obviously having Scott around last year was a huge. You could see straight away. Obviously, it was terrible what happened with the Reds, but obviously with Scott and a couple of the guys coming down, automatically you could see what such a difference it had. And also, like, I've been around the boys a long time, whereas if my voice probably isn't maybe as listened to at times as what Scott's is, and yeah, just that level of expertise and just being current. I think I retired from rugby 10 years ago now, so having current boys that have been in professional environments has been huge. And Scott's got a lot of respect from the playing group. And you could see already that those players are really taking it on board and wanting to learn. And I think that's been reflected in our pre-season training. And we've had about 40 players per training, per session. I mean, last night was the lowest we've had, and that was 27. So, you could. It's definitely come through. It's an environment that people want to be around, because guys like Scott and Guy Thompson, Hawksy, Tom Ellis, as a coaching group, we're just trying to make sure that we've got everyone. So, for instance, guys come on board and really looking at our breakdown and our defence. Having someone like that, again, is huge to have on board. And he said, he said, I'll probably just try and do one session a week. And he's been at every single session since. And he said, I absolutely love it. And that's what happens. It sort of gets hold of you a bit, because you can see how far these boys are coming on. So it becomes a bit addictive. So having likes of Scott around is absolutely amazing, and will only help us on the field and off the field, because obviously Scotty, as well as coaching, like he mentioned, is trying to balance his on-field stuff and his off-field stuff at the same time. But I think, to be honest, we've got a really, really good balance at the moment with that, and that's showing.
You mentioned the numbers you've had in training, stuff like that. The interest is clearly there. Of the first pre-season game last weekend, the men's first team playing Silhillians and the second team playing Guernsey Raiders. How did you find it went?
I think, there's always stuff to work on after pre-season games, but we haven't got the luxury of all these other clubs in our league are having 3-4 pre-season games. We don't have that luxury. It costs us about $7,500 just to get these two. So not going to use that excuse. We just got to prepare the best we can, ready for the first game. And I thought, on reflection, for a first hit out, it wasn't bad at all. I mean, we conceded 5 points, which is always a bonus. Maybe left some out there, but again, that's always going to happen. Not everything's going to go your way, but ultimately, I thought it was a fairly positive performance. And then the second team, again, I was dead chuffed with. We had 22 unavailable players on Saturday, and we still managed to get 2 sides out. So, and there was some really young lads in there, and it was just great to see them playing senior rugby. Some of them playing senior rugby for the first time, against a well-drilled Guernsey unit, and coming out 7 points short, I don't think was a it was a bad show whatsoever.
Scott, would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. I think it's one of those, like you said, in pre-season, you don't want to sort of look too much at the result. I've tried to bring it back this whole pre-season around the process. And as long as we're sticking to our process and sticking to what we've trained, then you can't really fault. Mistakes will happen. You're going to get decisions go for you, against you, all that sort of stuff. And I felt like one key thing we got out is probably when we did what we trained, what we said, that's when we looked really good. And sort of when we went off script and tried to maybe go old habits or things, that's maybe when it didn't look as good. And that's from like a coaching side, it's the perfect thing to be like, boys, look, when we do what we say and we do what we train, we look mega. When you don't, this is what happens. So it's from that side. And then, like you said, defensively was our big work on something we sort of want to pride ourselves on going into the season. And that took a big step up. And I guess they scored a try after about 20 pick and goes. So if you're going to concede one, if it's got to be after 22 pick and goes, we'll maybe give them one. So
we spoke to you recently about sort of stepping up to this new league and the jump in standard that will be. And you spoke a lot about being solid in defence away from home. Tell us a little bit about why that's going to be so important.
Yeah, I think just having a look at last year's results, you go and see at home teams are really strong. So most of the sort of top 4 or 5 teams won 80+% of their games at home. But then within that, a lot of the games are within 7 points or within 5 points even. So you could see there's a trend when it gets the sort of better teams are playing each other, it gets really close. And if you can stop a try here and there, you're going to be on the right side of the results. Like Tunbridge, we played in our first game. They won 9 out of 11 at home, but slipped up. They only won 2 out of their last 6, and they came 4th. So they could easily have won the league in sort of another year. So it's one of those where, so you see 1 to 6, but within that, there's so the margins are so fine. So we know if we back ourselves at home against anyone in any league. So that when we go away from home, can we then step up? Because that was at times last year where we maybe went from home and for 20 minutes we were asleep, 15 points down, we were like, okay, now we actually need to play. And then we'd go and do what we needed to do, whereas you won't get that luxury anymore. So it's a case of, if we can really bring that away from home, we'll give ourselves a really good chance to get some good results.
Well, the first 2 games of the season are away from home, with Tunbridge Wells' first game on the 7th of September. How interesting is it for you guys to have 2 away games to start, and how great would it be to get 2 wins to start it off?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think it just swings and roundabouts, doesn't it? Obviously, two away games to start the season with, but then we're back-to-back home games after that. So, it's going to be a challenge. I think the thing is, last year and the year before, I think there was an expectation on us. We have to go out and perform. We have to go out and, the pressure's on us in a way. But this year, all we can do is prepare the best we can in training. We're confident in the players' ability and go and give it all. And the systems that Scott and Guy have brought in this year have been absolutely brilliant, and that will certainly arm us with everything that we need to go away from home and get a win. But we're going to have to dig deep, and it is going to be hard. And like Scott said, sometimes last year we were probably a bit guilty of going, well, we potentially know we're going to win this game anyway, and that's why Scott said, we'll just turn it on and play, and from being 2 scores down, we end up winning by 6 scores to 2. And like you mentioned, Scott, we're not going to have that luxury, and I think it's going to be really tough. Bigger crowds, better players, but yeah, it's certainly an environment that players should want to play in and want to thrive in, because it's level 5 is still a very good standard.
Do you feel like that message is sunk in? Do you think the lads are aware that the step up will be significant?
Well, I think they know it's going to be more difficult. I think once we get into that first 15 minutes of the game, the boys may go, it's just as we expected, or it's a lot harder than we thought. We are sort of going into the unknown a bit, really. I mean, we haven't played a level 5 side for a long period of time, but we know we can play against sides. Like we played against Coldy back end of last season. They had 11 players who played in the championship the week before against Cornish Pirates, and we lost by a couple of points. So we know that we have the ability to be able to do it. But can we get that, the mental side of things, of the travel out of the way? Can we prepare well? Can the boys, get in the game early enough? Because the travel as well does contribute to it. I mean, we don't have the luxury of going on a Friday and then playing on a Saturday. It's just out in the morning, back in the last one, out on the first one, back on the last one. So that takes a bit of getting used to as well. And I'm sure it'll be a slight slight one of those for the boys to adapt a bit and get used to it again. But yeah, it's going to be tough, but it's I think one thing we're all looking forward to. I'm not even on the pitch, and I get just as excited as what the boys do to play. So yeah, it's more excitement around the group really at the moment.
You mentioned that first 15 minutes or such. Okay, there might have been occasions in last season where we weren't quite fully on it from the first whistle. As coaches, how do you address that within a team?
I think it's such a tricky one. I've been in loads of teams where that's a thing, and you try focus at the start of training or bits and pieces. But sometimes it's just not even a mental thing. Sometimes other teams are just like, when we're playing at home, you always know you're just that little bit more up for it. There's just one of those things. You're at home, you're in the home comforts, that side of things. You sort of expect the bouncer ball to go your way. You're in a comfortable space. So it's probably just a mental thing where you just got to get used to playing in those tough environments and sort of sticking at it. And maybe there's been things where maybe for 10 minutes you play really pragmatically and you just field position, bits and pieces, grow into a game. And then, okay, now we settled, now we can play. Where maybe last year we were guilty, we'd go and be like, we expect to beat this team, we got to go play. And then we're trying to do things we maybe don't need to. Then they get a bounce of a ball and it's 14-0 and you're like, hang on, what's just happened? And then we're like, okay, we know it. And then we get a 7 points and then it's 14-0 and then we slowly build ourselves back into it. So it's just one of those to find the balance. But like Myles said, we don't exactly know what we're going to expect. So we probably will. Luckily, we've got sort of in the backs, myself, Barnesy, Max has been around for years now. A few experienced heads around the team. So when we go away from home, it can be like, well, let's settle down for 10 minutes. Let's just see what this level's like, what this team's like, especially those first few away games. And then we can build it on from there and sort of take it step by step.
It must be so advantage as a head coach to have young players coming through and players like Scott who've played professionally still in the team as well as being a coach. How great has that been to have?
Yeah, 100%. I think, sometimes in a game when maybe things aren't going right for you and you've just got those experienced heads around you that, that can get the boys around and say, look, guys, it's one score. Whereas if, when you've got potentially a whole group of young lads, it's very, if you don't have those sort of leadership roles within that group, sometimes it can be difficult. So having so many leaders that have been in so many pressurized situations is certainly a huge help, really. And potentially they would have been in situations before on the field that a lot of those young players wouldn't have either. Scenario-based stuff. And bits and pieces like that. So I think, having those guys there is obviously a huge advantage, and that's shown in some of the games that we've had.
Do you think the success of last season? Do you think there might be a little bit of a target on your backs this year? They did so well last season.
To be honest with you, I think when we were in the league last year, everyone seemed to play their best game against us. And it was, the targets were on our back last year because we were winning. We were obviously winning games, so everyone wants to try and beat the top of the table side. So it seemed that every club we went to and every club that came to us would probably play their best rugby they played all season against us, which was brilliant because it's a challenge that we needed. I'm not sure. I mean, we haven't really spoken to anyone from any other leagues about it. You might get the odd person say easily you'll be at sort of top four, and then you might get one that say, I think it's a big step up from level 6 to level 5. So it really is just a definite going into the unknown and just going for it. Essentially, we've got nothing to lose. We want to go for it and win as many games as possible.
How do you manage expectations like that if it's so sort of up in the air?
I think what's not going to be difficult, but I think we've got some great support at the club. We've been winning a lot for the last 2 seasons. And I think, one of the big messages from me to everyone is to rally around the boys, regardless of whether we're winning every game of the season or whether we won 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. But there's going to be some really good rugby played. And that's ultimately, we want competitive rugby. Everyone wants to watch competitive rugby. No one wants to watch teams either winning or losing by 70, 80 points. And, again, that's reflective in the crowd numbers that we're seeing. I mean, Titonians, London Irish, we were up at sort of over 800 watching the game. So, and that's a level 6. There's no other level 6 side that would have 800 people watching. So, we've got it all there for us. We've got the support. So I think that there's no need to sort of place any expectation on our back apart from knowing how good the boys are and how good they can be and how they apply that on the pitch.
Speaking of that support, is there anything you'd like to say to the Jersey supporters now?
Well, just from me, obviously thank you for all the support you've given us. Obviously it's been a pretty rocky time for rugby in Jersey. It's been great to see they've supported that. They've been behind us every step of the way, and hopefully they'll continue to come up. Where the memberships have significantly skyrocketed over the last couple of weeks, which has been brilliant, and everyone seems to be jumping on board. So yeah, more of the same, really.
Scott?
Yeah, I think it's almost like a fresh start. We're on a special journey, so just come join us and let's go have a bit of fun with it. The bigger crowds we get, the more the boys get excited, and we know we're going to be pushing for a bunch of Jersey homegrown players as well to be on that pitch, to be representing the island, because I know from where I came from, when you're playing for your home team, it's that bit more special, and when you're watching someone who's come from where you are, it just sort of builds that even more exciting. So if we can sort of really build something special for that next generation of talent and youngsters coming through, let's all do it together, and who knows where this club can be in the coming years, but let's enjoy the ride while we can.
You can tell from the amount of people that are still turning up to training and the size of the squad, being able to put out 2 teams, even with 20 odd people away, just what an incredible job you guys are doing, considering the difficulties that have happened over the last 12 months or whatnot. So congratulations to all of you involved. Cannot wait for the start of the new season. Myles, Scott, thank you so much for joining us, chaps.
Legend.
Thank you so much.
And there you have it. Thank you so much to both Scott and Myles for joining us on this fascinating episode of the Bailiwick Sport podcast. I think I speak for everybody listening when I wish them the best of luck for their upcoming season. Keep your eyes peeled next week for the full match report and reaction from the game in the JEP. But for now, we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.